See, the mains is literally the main examination, and this is going to decide whether you will be in the list or not. So you really cannot take mains lightly. The core idea of asking questions in GS4, I think, is to assess your ethics, not your knowledge of ethics. There's no point in writing deontology, teleology, and all those fancy words. But if you write, firstly, the biggest myth about essay, as I believed in my first attempt of 2024, was that you don't have to practice much for essays. In my opinion, there are three things in essays. First is your content. Second is your presentation. By presentation, I mean structuring of the essay. And the most neglected part of the essay preparation is writing. Your idea is being presented via your writing, and your writing will be appealing to be read by the examiner if your presentation is good. And I don't need to tell you that it is very easy for an examiner to just flip through your pages and give you a 50 or words mark. The editor-in-chief of Washington Post, and he said that clear writing comes from clear thinking. And the more clearer your thinking is, the better your writing will be. The more lucid your writing will be, the more concise your writing will be.
Lakshay is someone जिससे हम लोग सबसे ज्यादा अटैच्ड हैं सिविल्स डेली में, ठीक है, एंड इट्स नॉट एन अंडरस्टेटमेंट एट ऑल. वी हैव सीन हिज जर्नी. ही इज नॉट समवन हु कम्स फ्रॉम अ वेरी पॉश बैकग्राउंड जिसकी लाइफ में सिर्फ यूपीएससी है जो एक प्रॉब्लम थी, एवरीथिंग एल्स वाज सॉर्टेड. ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. ही हैज हैड ट्रेमेंडस ups and downs in his personal life as well, and that shapes people. When people have had rock solid experiences, they have experienced absolute lows, absolute highs. आप उनसे बात करते हैं, आपको समझ आता है कि they are people with gravity, and Lakshay was one of them. अब the reason why we love Lakshay is because there is perhaps no other student who has internalized our frameworks the way Lakshay has done. इनको टू द बोन्स समझ आया कि हम ऐसे में क्या करवाना चाह रहे हैं, क्या बच्चों से एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हैं, किस चीज से मार्क्स आते हैं, मेंस के पेपर में क्या करना चाहिए, इंटरव्यूज में क्या करना चाहिए. सो ही हैज सैट डाउन विद दोस फ्रेमवर्क्स. इन्होंने ऊपर ऊपर से ये चीजें नहीं समझी, एंड दैट मेक्स हिम लाइक इनके थ्रू आपको चीजें जब आप समझेंगे, जब आप देखेंगे कि इन्होंने कहाँ एफर्ट मारा है, ये जब आपको बताएंगे कि इसका मतलब X होता है, इसका मतलब Y नहीं होता है, it is going to hit you very differently. Something that probably even we will find it very hard to express, right? One thing that Lakshay was telling me, right? Rohit sir say he had discussions on essays, and he said that, sir, exam तो एक जगह है, but I want to be able to write and express like that, right? So दैट शोज हिज माइंडसेट कि ये नंबर लाने के लिए, ये नेक्स्ट हफ्ते सर्वाइव करने के लिए पढ़ाई नहीं कर रहे हैं. ही हैज हाई स्टैंडर्ड्स. ही नोज द काइंड ऑफ बेंचमार्क्स दैट ही हैज टू हिट इन लाइफ. एंड सिमिलर था, आई थिंक इंटरव्यूज में भी दैट सेम फिलॉसफी वाज रिफ्लेक्टिंग. सो लक्ष्य बच्चों को बहुत ज्यादा, आई थिंक इससे ज्यादा लर्निंग से भरा सेशन मेरे लिए कंसेप्चुअलाइज करना बहुत मुश्किल हो रहा है. And here is a small memento for you.
Thank you, sir.
So we are on a personal mission कि हमारे जितने भी dying arts हैं, they get to each and every home, right? And this is also one of those traditional Tal Patta Chitra art that is on the verge of extinction because it's that damn hard to create. So over to you, Lakshay. I think aapki Shubham Jatte sir was Lakshay's mentor, and June last year, that's when you come in touch with us, and एक के बाद एक फिर improvement की journey शुरू होती है. पहला पेपर आपका आता है एंड आपको कहा जाता है कि हाँ अभी इम्प्रूवमेंट का स्कोप है, एंड यू आर लाइक, आर यू किडिंग, इससे ज्यादा और क्या करूं, राइट? इट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम देयर. एंड हाँ, अगर आप बच्चों को ये वाली बात भी बता सके, हाउ टू बी इन द राइट फ्रेम ऑफ माइंड, कैटास्ट्रोफाइज नहीं करना है, हाउ डिड यू लाइक बाउंस बैक, दैट विल ऑल्सो बी लाइक एन इल्यूमिनेटिंग जर्नी. ओवर टू यू.
Okay, so hi everybody. Sir has very graciously introduced me. I think my journey has been almost very similar to everybody else's. Of course, there have been differences in which I was able to do different things differently because of the mentors I was able to get in touch with. and I will just share my insights with you on those regards. So the session will be mostly based on, again, the most crucial part of the exam, which in my opinion is the mains is literally the main examination, and this is going to decide whether you will be in the list or not. So you really cannot take mains lightly. Of course, the cliched advice goes that you have to be mains ready before you start prelims. Of course, we have to be mains ready before we start for prelims, but we have to see how our journeys align on where we stand on prelims. So let's begin with mains, and hopefully I'll be able to share what I learned in these 2 attempts about my mains, right? So in mains, we have to firstly realize that there are these 3 components. There is one essay, there is GS, and then there is ops, right? Which is your optionals, right? So for optional, everybody has their different optional. My optional was commerce, and so not a very popular optional. So I don't think most people will relate to it. So I'll just focus on these 2 parts. One is essay, and in GS also there are 2 different categories of papers, GS 1, 2, 3, and there is our ethics. Ethics have some level of contourship with essays. Because as we are seeing in the ethics paper, the evolution is turning more towards analysis and the gray areas of problems rather than just ecology versus economy divides, right? So yes, so we will be focusing on this, and I assure you that these learnings will be very much helpful to you, right? So let's begin with essay, right? So firstly, the biggest myth about essay, as I believed in my first attempt of 2024, was that you don't have to practice much for essays. Like you just write 2 or 3 essays during your pre and mains, and you can just write another one in the exam hall, and you will be scoring a good average marks of 100 to 125, and you'll sail through. This is a very crappy advice in my opinion, because this leaves a lot of things to chance, and you are not doing justice to a paper that is worth 250 marks, which is as equal to your marks in GS3. And I don't need to iterate how much effort we put in GS3 vis-a-vis the effort we put in essay. So I think the essay paper demands its fair share of efforts, and we need to give it, and the essay paper will reward us back in due time. So how do we prepare for essays? Let's begin by that. Now, in my opinion, there are 3 things in essays. First is your content. Second is your presentation. By presentation, I mean structuring of the essay. You know, the way you are writing a paragraph, the length of the paragraphs, the, embellishments. By embellishments, I mean, people use quotes, people use poems, people use, names of books, or people quote philosophers, or all those things, right? Those are things. Comes lastly, and the most neglected part of the essay preparation is writing. The last time we wrote essays or any kind of comprehension in English was, I think, back in 12th standard, which is at least 3 years behind you by the time you are preparing for essays. And let's not go into how we prepared for essays in CBSEs. So, how do we master these 3 things? Now, conventional wisdom goes like that: you just prepare this content, your quote unquote SAK notes. These comprise of these content, like you have prepared some introduction, right? You have prepared some anecdotes, you have prepared your data, and almost all the toppers I personally saw in 2024 attempt, everybody focused on this aspect a lot. You have your compilations of introductions, introductions about, and anecdotes about Gandhiji, anecdotes about World War, anecdotes about history, so on and so forth. However, as much important that is, unless you bring a cocktail of these three elements, you will not score good marks. Why? Because your content is your idea. Your idea is being presented via your writing, and your writing will be appealing to be read by the examiner if your presentation is good. And I don't need to tell you that it is very easy for an examiner to just flip through your pages and give you a 50 or worse marks. So it is your job to make the examiner read your copy and make it irresistible to read. So for these, you need these three things. Going on each step, each part, step by step. Firstly, let's address content, right? In content, we include these things. How should our introductions be? How should our anecdotes be? How should our quotes be? How should our data, etc., whatever things. What we do not realize in crafting content for essays is that the meat of the matter of essays are not the anecdotes, not the stories, not the ideas, not the stories, not the data, not the facts, not the examples from Pestel. The core content of an essay is idea. What is your idea about justice? How do you think about justice? How do you think about freedom? How do you think about truth? There was this essay in 2025 called Truth Knows No Color, right? What are your musings on the word truth? What does truth stand for you? To give you just an example, let's take this one word, truth, right? Now, truth for Gandhiji meant experimentation. He experimented with his truth, and that's how he found it. Truth for Vedic philosophy meant ekam sat. So truth was one for Vedic philosophy, right? Truth for various religions mean differently. Islam and all the Abrahamic religions believe in one God, and that one God is omniscient, and that one God is truth. But for Hinduism and for some other religions, truth is not found in God. Truth is found in salvation. For Meera, the truth came in the form of bhakti. But for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the truth came in satsang. So there can be multiple ideas. And for Socrates, of course, for Socrates, truth came in form of the ideal for which he was ready to die. Truth was something that was so not non-negotiable that he gave up his life for truth. So these are the musings about truth. Same goes for freedom. There's this very famous quote, none of us are free until all of us are free. Injustice anywhere is threat to justice everywhere. These are very simplistic looking quotes which are just waiting to be coming in the exam. And let's just talk about it. Like, there is freedom, there is justice. And what if any topic comes around these core ideas and the tension surrounding them? Suppose there is freedom. Now, there's an inherent paradox with freedom. To get more freedom, to be more free, we have to be more disciplined. If I am free to do whatever I want with my day, then I'm not really free. If I am disciplined, I have to give up my freedom in order to gain more flexibility with my tasks. If I am just mundanely dwelling onto whatever musing comes to my mind, then I'm not totally free. I am actually slave to my passions, slave to my desires. I'm not actually free, right? And on social level, if all of us are free, then none of us are free, because my freedom can very well encroach upon yours. There's this idea of Matsya Raj. So these are things which I am able to talk on the drop of a hat because I made certain pointers about these core ideals and made my own musings regarding these core tensions, which can anytime pop up in the UPSC exam. Of course, we are not here to crack a philosophy exam. So we restrict ourselves to the content we think we will be able to write a good essay on, and then we move forth. But as I highlighted earlier, content does not mean introduction, anecdotes, data, facts, etc. Content means ideas. Ideas about topics which UPSC have asked. So that was one. You can add your quotes, etc. In freedom, etc. So suppose I have maintained this topic of freedom, and in freedom, I will of course talk about the freedom struggle. In freedom struggle, we have multiple ideas. Tilak had this idea of Swaraj, but the moderates had this idea of freedom within a framework of British government. We had this parent authority which transferred us some powers, and we worked under those restrictions. The same thing can be applied in our personal lives as well. When we are kids, we surrender some of our freedom to our parents in order to be guided and nurtured by them. However, when we rebel against them and we choose a path which they don't sanction, then we are essentially creating our own trail, and of course, that tension can also be explored in that direction. I understand that I may be sounding a bit esoteric, but you need to understand that the kind of topics that UPSC is asking these days, these cannot be hard-lined and mugged up like your GS3 paper. You have to identify the tensions, you have to identify the dilemmas which operate around these tensions. How do we resolve them in society? How they should be resolved in society? What will be the implications of resolving these society? Of course, these in the society. Of course, you can create your own, they say, ask what, why, how regarding any idea, and you will generate few dimensions. The risk behind that, the risk in this strategy is you restrain your thinking mechanically. Of course, it gives you a structure, but it also restrains you from thinking beyond what is obvious, right? Having said that, this may be looking a very idealistic way of looking at essays, but the way paper is progressing, the way, there was this question, truth knows no color now. If you prepare just introduction, anecdotes, data, etc., I don't think anyone would be able to write an analytical essay. Of course, you can fill those 15 pages with whatever garbage you want to. But if you want to analyze the core tensions, you want to hit the nail on the head, if you want to, open up examiner's mind, if you want to really give him that, edge, which the other copies are not writing, because, well, for them, essay is just a paper which you write 2 essays at your home and third one is in the exam hall. If you're giving him something extra from the crowd that thinks like that, you're bound to score better marks. That was one, right? Now, this seems very abstract, and how do we put this into a framework which we can replicate in 15 minutes of brainstorming, which we get for every essay? How do we do that? We create short notes out of it, we revise them, we apply them in our practice essays, we internalize them, because since these are ideas, you don't have to mug them up. And once you do that, you will yourself find out how amazingly analytical your essays become, right? So yeah, we do that, we do this, and of course we can begin from very obvious tensions which UPSC loves to ask, like freedom, like justice, like truth, like happiness. There's this PYQ about there is no path to happiness, the happiness is the path, right? This is such a beautiful tension which can be analyzed from Buddhist philosophy, from Hindu philosophy, from current world, how we are searching for happiness in algorithms, we are searching for happiness in the digital world, much to the detriment of our happiness in the real world. right? So once you start developing these frameworks on one paper, at your own place, at your own leisure, once you start thinking in terms of ideas, I think then you are preparing content for essays. And of course, that brings us to our next segment. Content to ban gaya. Now what? How do I replicate it in exam? Because there can be any tension in those 8 essays which possibly can come out of nowhere, which I may have not prepared, quote unquote. So how do I, or even if it comes from the topics which I have prepared, how do I apply those frameworks, apply those non-framework thinking? Because in a framework, you just write down PESTL, political, economic, social, technological, and your framework is ready and you're good to go to write an essay in 5 minutes. But once you start thinking in terms of ideas, how do you create ideas? How do you link ideas? Because you have to maintain a flow also in an essay. How do you do that in 15 minutes of brainstorming and bring ideas, bring a flow, and write an essay? How do you do that? That comes in your, firstly, practice part. How do you practice this content? Secondly, in your writing part. You can have the best ideas possible, but unless you are able to articulate them in a manner which is lucid, self-explanatory to the examiner, it is worthless. Your ideas should be explained in plain, simple English in the most economical amount of words to the examiner in as simplistic format as possible, backed by an example or two. When we writing is essentially a form of thinking. And as the progenies of the Indian education system, we think very hazily. Or for better or worse, we don't think at all. So we need to develop our thinking in some structured manner in the core ideas that we are able to write in a very lucid format. There was this quote from, I think, the editor-in-chief of Washington Post, and he said that good writing comes from good thinking. The clear writing comes from clear thinking. And the more clearer your thinking is, the better your writing will be, the more lucid your writing will be, the more concise your writing will be. Otherwise, you will be just rambling about once upon a time there was a kid in Vadodara. He grew up to be Gandhiji. He fought against the injustices. You are making the examiner bored. We don't have to do that. And it is in one of UPSC's guidelines that the essays should be concise. So unless we are clear in our thought, we will not be clear in our writing, and we will be writing hazy ideas, despite the fact the ideas themselves are very good, courtesy to this. So how do we develop clear thinking? We develop clear thinking by regular practicing. So writing essentially becomes a practicable art. The more you practice writing, the more you improve. You have to write, and don't write entire essays. Just think about, what were your learnings from this podcast? Write that on one page. And after you are done writing, try to condense it in 2 paragraphs, or cut the content by 50%. And I'm sure you will be able to do that, all the while retaining the core meaning of it. So try this exercise, and if you continuously repeat this over and over again, your writing will itself become lucid, more flowy, more concise. So that will improve. Of course, you can use ChatGPT for it as well, but ChatGPT is very assertive and it gives very critical feedback because it's a machine. And but yeah, it can be used as a Stepney, right? So that was the writing part. Now comes the third, presentation part. In presentation, your essays should be visually appealing to the examiner. By that I mean one para, one idea. There should be some structure to para. See, I'm not saying that, I'm not countering my earlier assertion that you should not be structured in your content. Structuring in your content can help in the exam to generate more dimensions. But you have to essentially think in terms of ideas and not in terms of structures, in terms of content building. Here, when you're writing in terms of presentation, you need structures because a structured writing creates predictability. A predictable writing creates a flow. A flow makes a reading effortless, and effortless reading gets rewarded, right? Now that was a good flow. So you create these presentation embellishments. You create a structured paragraph, as in you are writing your point first, then you are writing like whatever your argument is, then you are explaining your point in one line, then you are explaining how it relates to topic, and then you are finally relating it with an example, right? So if you write one liner each, or maybe 1 2 1 2, there will be around 5 lines per para, and your paragraph will be filled with a very absolutely good structure. Of course, you don't have to mechanically follow it in the entire I think 20 or 30 para long essay, but for the majority of the body part, if you follow this, I followed this, you will be able to generate a good flow, a good cohesiveness in your para. Your para will not be deviating, and that will, of course, align with this, and that will create a symmetry in your essay, right? And once you and if that seems mechanical to you, because at some point it started seeming mechanical to me, you must understand this, that as you practice with this, you write 30-40 paragraphs with this one framework, you will internalize this framework. And of course, even then you can play around as well. You will explain the point first, you will write the point later, you will write the example first. Writing is an art. Art has a definite set of rules, but once you become a master of an art, you can bend the rules and it will create a masterpiece, right? So once you internalize these, you will, of course, go ahead and be able to mix and match. But for a beginner, I think this is a very good structure to follow, right? So there was presentation, then comes, of course, these embellishments, quotes, poems, books, names. To each his own. I like to do all of these things, right, to create that X factor in the essays. I like reading books. I like reading poems, some proses, right? As a matter of fact, where the head is held high, mind is without fear. I think it's a bit too cliched. We should avoid that. So using offbeat I think should be the key. Using offbeat poems, offbeat quotes, offbeat name of the books. There was this book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I'm sure I'm butchering his name, but there was this book called The Anxious Generation, and it was quoted in the economic survey of last year. And I happened to read that book, and that book was one of the most amazing books I read about social media, and it gave me tons of content for essays. You can probably just see 20-minute summaries of books on YouTube. I used to do that, and I still do to some extent. So that creates a good repository by the time you reach your July, before your mains. So yes, these things combined will help you to generate a very good essay. Of course, I have avoided the obvious things, which is your how your intro should be, how your body should be, how your linking line should be, how your pre-conclusion should be, and how your ultimate conclusion should be. because I think you should speak only when it improves upon silence. And I think enough has been said about these things. I think these are the factors which most people do not focus upon, and that's why I wanted to share my ideas regarding these, because as I said, think in terms of ideas. Now, let's move on to the most academic subject of UPSC mains, GS1. It's a concoction of multiple subjects. You begin with your AMAC. You have your modern history. You have your post-independence history. You have your world history. You have your geography. You have society. In geography, we have physical geography. In geography, we have human geography. And since UPSC has given a bouncer in 2025, I would create one more category. Miscellaneous. So yeah, a lot of content here. The bad news is there's a lot of content. The good news is you have read most of the content. इसको आधा काटा है because आधा ही हम पढ़ के आते हैं, right? From prelims, right? जो हम prelims से पढ़ के आते हैं, हमारी प्रॉब्लम ये है हम उसको बहुत लाइटली ले लेते हैं, और लाइटली नहीं भी लेते तो उसको मेंस पर्सपेक्टिव से नहीं पढ़ते. There are two problems with these three subjects. As I said, हम उसको लाइटली ले लेते हैं, हम उसको प्री पर्सपेक्टिव से पढ़ते हैं, और हम उसके अंदर वैल्यू ऐड नहीं करते. सो लाइटली तो नहीं लेना है, दैट इज गिवन. प्री पीओवी का मतलब होता है बिकमिंग अ फैक्ट पगलू. यू mug up a lot of facts, but you do not substantiate your argument with those facts which you learned in pre. Suppose if I am writing about, say, Arcade is social life in medieval India, right? So of course I'll be talking about all those frameworks which we know about society. We talk about polity, how the economy worked, how was the condition of women, how was the condition of Dalits, how was the condition of minorities, and how was the technology thing was going on, right? The run-of-the-mill pestle, not all of it. So we see these things, right? And we write on these pointers. This is level 1, in which I think most of the people who clear mains reach. How do you substantiate them? You write about, for example, in polity, how the medieval polity was shaped. So we will talk about that. It was a very political structure. Predominantly there were monarchies, but there were some semblances of democracy, such as in the Baswanna, in the Anubhav Mantapas, right? We read about this in the Kannadiga history. And economy, we will talk about the horse trade with the Arabs, and we will talk about the calicut and all those stuff. What about the women? We'll talk about the different women from the different parts of the country, what they're faring. We had rebels like Mirabai, but we also had Sati Pratha going on in medieval India, right? Goes same about Dalits, goes same about tech invented by Alauddin and all those stuff. I'm talking about we have to add value from our pre, impose it on the frameworks we learn from mains, and I think your job is half done. Of course, then you do your, I would say, creativity in your introduction and conclusions. You will make them aligned to your question itself and not just dump whatever random fact you have created for Harappan architecture. You will contextualize it to the question which has been asked, because only then you will get the marks. Otherwise, everybody, I think, with any semblance of core mains preparation will be preparing one introduction on every dynasty one conclusion on every dynasty. Run-of-the-mill conclusions, I think, sound very generic and do not land well. It shows that you had a platonic understanding of the question. Vis-a-vis, if you land your own ideas, your own synthesis from the question in the intro and conclusion to show the examiner that I have gotten this question in the way the other person did not, right? So how do you develop that? You will practice a lot, and then you will catch the nitty-gritties of the question, how it plays with you. A question on Harappan architecture can be asked in multiple dimensions. It can be asked how Harappans are more advanced than current civilization in terms of sanitation. Harappan architecture can be asked in terms of social equality. Harappan architecture can be asked in terms of its ingenuity. All those stuff, of course. And the introduction and conclusion will change or be tweaked to some extent in those respective questions as well, right? Yeah, so this solves this pre-POV thing, and then comes value add. Of course, you will create a lot of diagrams because everybody likes a good picture, and you will create your seals for Harappans. Oh damn. Yeah. So yeah, ये हो गया. These will be our seals and amulets and all that. We will create these micro diagrams, and we'll be doing a good job. And remember that the good job is not defined by how good that job is. It should be better than the other person, right? So these value adds will help you in AMAC, modern history, and physical geography. In physical geography, of course, you have to make diagrams, very good, nice diagrams. You can find Topper compilation. You can find, I think NCERTs are a great source for that. You can create your, of course, there's this diagrams like Horst and Grabens, and yeah. So of course, I have butchered this diagram. It does not even look like a Horst or Graben, but yeah, you get the point, right? So you create these micro diagrams. Like there was this plate tectonics question. So of course, you will create subduction zones. You will create Benioff zones, etc. Right? So we'll do all these things, and you will be able to score good in these sections, which I have just erased from JS1. Coming to post-independence, coming to Word, do not ignore them. How do you prepare for them? They are insane on French Revolution. They are insane on post-independence consolidation. Right? You prepare your holistic understanding on these topics, not just surface level understanding that what was the tennis club oath, what was Lafayette doing, what was Lakaite, or post in the consolidation. You won't just read about States Reorganization Committee, etc., etc. You will read about the nitty-gritties of the society that led to these changes, how it impacted our polity. That requires commitment of time, but it is also less ROI per amount of effort invested, but per unit of amount invested. But I think if you need to, truly gain your edge over your competitors, I think these are some neglected but rewarding areas. Okay, then this is done. Now we come to society, right? Society, I think the best way, and I might be controversial here, the best way to prepare society is, I think, your newspapers, right? Because these things, the society, I think, is one of the most transient topics. Of course, there are some topics like globalization, in which there is this tension of globalization and like cultural assertion and all those stuff. So you prepare your notes on some core themes based on the PYQs and the micro themes, and you keep your reading of newspapers very much under control, so that you are able to answer bouncer questions as well. And of course, if the question is a rhyme of your PYQ, you must be nailing it on the head, right? How do you prepare for society? You just take your notes from newspapers. This just holds true for society only, right? You collect your examples, and I think one should not go overboard with the sociologists. Some people are quoting Leela Fernandez, Iravati Garve. I think it's good to substantiate your points, but you must understand that it's not sociology's paper, it's GS1, for God's sake, right? So yeah, society is done. There should be very good examples, like there was this example of Muhammad Deepak, a very good example for secularism. Of course, Kolhapuri sandals and all that are Sadabahar examples. Try avoiding Sadabahar examples. Try to catch examples which are happening in your society. Do not try to catch offbeat examples which the examiner may not appreciate. The KBC kid example is a great example of capturing the nitty-gritties of society, right? So yeah, that was your GS1. Now there was this GS2, and there was Polity, there was this IR, there's the social justice. The lion's share goes to Polity. I do not have much different things to say other than, but the conventional wisdom goes here in Polity. However, I will again iterate my fact which I iterated in GS1 which is that you need to frame your intro and conclusion in the sense that you understand the question. If a question is coming on governor, you do not quote your copy-pasted quote for governor. You contextualize it based on the question which is asked and the demand it requires, right? Of course, the articles goes, the case studies, the case laws goes, the judgment goes. You have to add that X factor into your answers to stand out from the crowd. So that is non-negotiable. However, apart from this topic, IR is something of very dynamic nature, but there is method to the madness. The path again goes through PYQs. You take your PYQs, you solve them, you gain your perspective from them. Editorial analysis and becoming a geopolitical expert, I do not think is a very wise usage of time. Since anybody who is preparing sincerely would be reading newspapers, I hope they would be reading editorials, and I think the osmosis learning from just going through the editorials repeatedly, I think will give enough perspective to write a good answer on a static or a dynamic IR topic, right? That gives us to a social justice part. You have your core themes: health, poverty, tribals, transgenders, PWDs. You keep on collecting data, new facts, new schemes, new initiatives regarding these subaltern sections of the society and the issues regarding those, and prepare good 1-2 pages and take the PYQs, write them down, and go ahead, right? The scope of using diagrams in GS2, I think, is less. IR then you can, of course, draw the world map and be done with it. And yeah, so now the Thanos of GS, which Thanos used to destroy half of the population, and GS3, I think, destroys half of the time. So you must know that eco, agri, environment, disaster management, science, and of course security. All of these are worth the same. So there's no point in reading economy for an extraordinary amount of time at the cost of security and at the cost of agriculture, which have predictable pattern of questions, predictable answers, and predictable marks. So you need to calibrate your efforts towards these subjects, not on the detriment of these two relatively disloyal subjects because they give bouncers almost every alternate years. But you in the key to scoring good in GS3, I think, goes through security and agriculture. You analyze the hell out of previous year questions. You create your notes and rigorously add value, voraciously practice, and ruthlessly execute in the mocks. I think that's the way to go. With novel case studies, novel ideas, novel best practices. I think that is a good way to go right in GS3. Do not become a data collector. GS3 is not a data report. GS3, see, value addition does not equal being a data paglu. It means quotes. It means writing about Amartya Singh in economics answer, writing about Gadgil in environment answer, writing about C. Raja Mohan in internal security. So you do value addition in a lot of terms, right? Not just in terms of data, because data is hard to learn. So yeah, you do these stuff, and in security, of course, we have those straight frameworks, and frameworks add value to, of course, differentiate your answers from the other person, and again, write contextualized intro and conclusions, and of course, you'll be done with these two. Coming to science, environment, and economics, you will realize that these three are relatively dynamic with some hint of static. So जो भी static है, based on PYQs and syllabus, you prepare it thoroughly. And there are nitty-gritties as well. In disaster management, they're asking recent disaster in the last 3 decades. So you delve deeper than what our previous toppers used to, because UPSC is raising their level, so should you. And yeah, so there's science, there's environment, there's eco. I think all these subjects require more understanding. In science and tech, there can be questions that finish within 1 page, and you have nothing left to write on second page. Do not hesitate in leaving 1 page blank if you have addressed the demand of the question in that one particular page itself, right? So I think that's about it from my side on GS3. You can, of course, add value via diagrams, via case studies, best practices. Again, the same drill, you know it, right? Comes the bestest part of GS mains, the most rewarding, the most, I would say, analytical, and the most misunderstood part of GS. Great ROI, because there is just one subject apart from the other cocktails of GS. Very limited syllabus. Very interesting also, क्योंकि कुछ रटना नहीं है, right? Problem क्या होती है? But we give stepmotherly treatment to GS4 as well, just the way we do to essay. We do not spend time in GS4 with as much rigor as we do on GS1 to 3. And that results in subpar scores. The length of the paper does not help either. The paper is excruciatingly lengthy, and these factors deter people from scoring good in GS4. So how do you address the tensions in GS4? See, in my perspective, GS4's paper has been evolving in recent times. Applied ethics have been asked and are being asked these days, and the ethical dilemmas around those core tensions in society, misinformation, social media, ecology, all those things, they can be to some extent prepared beforehand as the conventional wisdom goes. But what I want to convey via this medium is one step beyond that. We need to understand that the paper is becoming more and more analytical, and we need to understand that to grasp the demand of question in that 0.5 second, 1.5 second of the reading time we take, or 30 seconds or 45 seconds based on the length or the complexity of the question. We must realize that the paper is getting more and more technical, more and more analytical, and more an assessment of your ethical aptitude, right? So you need to make sure that you practice the questions by hand, not just by brainstorming, to gain that knack of writing in very stressed environment, and to generate novel ideas. It is very easy to quote Kant, quote Socrates, quote Gandhiji, and end every question with an SDG. But to address that core tension of the question, and to analyze, and to write points, and to finish the paper in time, and to also write examples, of course, because the mainstay of GS4 is examples. That is a very Herculean task, and it won't come easy to you naturally in the exam. When you do these tension analysis, as I call them, you notice this in 2025's paper. There was this case study on the border guards. Like, border guards had to were in an ethical dilemma of whether to let your humanitarian ideals of a nation win or the security interests. So these are some case studies which are not conventionally taught in the UPSC ecosystem, but something which really touches the core of your idealism or your vision towards how you view the role of a civil servant in a society, and by default of that, how a civil servant, how good a civil servant you want to be, right? So I think whenever we are answering questions in ethics, we need to get into the shoes of an administrator, of a bureaucrat, and we must answer it from that POV as to how you will be showing your own vision in each answer. And I think that is the biggest X factor that you can ever add to any of your ethics answers, right? The core idea of asking questions in GS4, I think, is to assess your ethics, not your knowledge of ethics. So there's no point in writing deontology, teleology, and all those fancy words. But if you write that I want to wipe every tear from every eye, as Gandhiji said, as Nehruji said in his Tryst with Destiny speech, that the service of India means service of the millions who suffer under its flag. If you write, Sarojini Naidu said that under this flag, nobody is a prince or poor, everybody is same. I think those show your true values. It adds X factor also. It is original also. And I think it expresses what is meant to be a good civil servant. Right. So try doing that and improve upon that by writing more and more tests. And I think that's about it, which I wanted to share. If there is anything else, please put it in the comments below. Thank you.